aber weiß ich von denen, die heute gegen Deutschland hetzen, von dieser internationalen Klick, die das deutsche Volk so verleumdet, von denen hat keiner jemals auch nur eine Kugel pfeifen gehört.
The early life and broken dreams. In 1889, in a quiet border town called Braunau-on-Inn, a boy was born who would one day change the course of world history. His name was Adolf Hitler. At the time, there was nothing extraordinary about his life. He grew up in a strict household where discipline ruled daily life. His father, Alois Hitler, worked as a customs officer and believed strongly in authority, structure, and obedience. He wanted his son to follow the same stable government career. But young Hitler had a completely different vision for his future. From an early age, he was fascinated by art and architecture. He spent hours drawing buildings, streets, and landscapes, imagining himself one day becoming a respected artist. His mother, Clara Hitler, supported his artistic ambitions and remained the person he loved the most in his life. However, the relationship with his father was often tense. Alois pushed him toward a bureaucratic career, while Hitler resisted and focused more on his creative interests. When his father died in 1903, Hitler felt free to pursue his dream. After finishing school, he moved to Vienna with the hope of entering the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts. But his dream collapsed when the Academy rejected his application. The judges believed his artistic skills were not strong enough for painting. Hitler tried again the following year, hoping the decision would change. But once again he was rejected. This second failure devastated him. Without a clear direction in life, he remained in Vienna, struggling to survive. Over the next several years, Hitler lived in extreme poverty. At times, he slept in shelters for the homeless and depended on selling small paintings and postcards to earn money. Vienna, at the beginning of the 20th century, was a complex city filled with political conflict, cultural diversity, and rising nationalism. Newspapers and political speeches filled the streets with debates about identity, power, and the future of Europe. During these difficult years, Hitler spent much of his time reading newspapers and listening to political discussions around him. Slowly, his worldview began to change. The frustration of poverty, the humiliation of failure, and the political atmosphere of Vienna all influenced his thinking. By the time he left the city, the young artist who had once dreamed of painting landscapes had already begun developing a deep interest in politics and nationalism. Then, in 1914, a dramatic event changed his life completely. World War I erupted across Europe. For millions of young men, the war became a call to duty. Hitler volunteered to serve in the German army, even though he had been born in Austria. On the battlefield, he served as a messenger, carrying messages between units under extremely dangerous conditions. Despite the constant threat of death, he performed his duties with determination and discipline. His bravery earned him the Iron Cross, a military decoration he wore with pride. For the first time in his life, Hitler felt he belonged somewhere. The army gave him purpose, structure, and recognition. But when the war ended in 1918, Germany was defeated and the empire collapsed. The shock of defeat left the nation angry and humiliated. For Hitler, this moment became the beginning of a new path. The war had ended, but his political journey was only just beginning. The rise of a political leader. After World War I ended, Germany entered one of the most unstable periods in its history. The once powerful empire had collapsed, the economy was struggling, and millions of people were frustrated by the harsh conditions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. The agreement forced Germany to accept blame for the war, give up territory, and pay enormous financial reparations. Many Germans believed the country had been unfairly punished. This anger created fertile ground for radical political movements that promised change and national revival. In 1919, Adolf Hitler joined a small and relatively unknown group called the German Workers' Party. At first, the organization had little influence, but Hitler quickly attracted attention because of his extraordinary speaking ability. His speeches were intense, emotional, and filled with powerful messages about national pride, unity, and revenge for Germany's defeat. Crowds who felt humiliated and powerless began listening to him with growing interest. Within a short time, Hitler became one of the most important members of the party. The movement later changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party. Hitler played a central role in transforming it from a small political club into a growing national movement. Through dramatic rallies, carefully designed propaganda, and passionate speeches, the party began attracting supporters across the country.
In 1923, Hitler attempted to seize power in Munich through a failed uprising known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The plan collapsed quickly, and Hitler was arrested and charged with treason. Many expected his political career to end in prison. Instead, the trial made him famous throughout Germany. During his time in prison, he wrote a political book called Mein Kampf, outlining his ideology, his views about race and nationalism, and his vision for Germany's future. After his release, Hitler changed his strategy. Rather than attempting another violent coup, he focused on gaining power through legal political means. Over the following years, the Nazi Party continued expanding its influence. The turning point came in 1929, when the global economic crisis, known as the Great Depression, struck Germany with devastating force. Businesses collapsed, unemployment skyrocketed, and millions of citizens lost hope in traditional political parties. Hitler positioned himself as the leader who could restore order and rebuild the nation. His message promised economic recovery, national pride, and strong leadership. As desperation grew, so did support for the Nazi Party. By the early 1930s, it had become one of the most powerful political movements in Germany. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he moved rapidly to eliminate opposition, consolidate authority, and transform the fragile democracy into a totalitarian state. The man who had once struggled as a poor artist had now risen to control an entire nation.
War and the fall of a dictator. Once Adolf Hitler became the leader of Germany in 1933, he began reshaping the country according to his vision. Political opponents were removed, independent parties were banned, and the Nazi government gained total control over public life. Through propaganda, strict censorship, and powerful public rallies, the regime built a culture of loyalty and obedience. Hitler promised to restore Germany's strength and rebuild the economy. Massive infrastructure projects were launched, industries expanded, and unemployment began to decline. Many citizens believed their country was rising again after years of humiliation. But beneath this appearance of recovery,
the Nazi regime was also promoting dangerous and extremist ideology. Policies based on racial discrimination and persecution began spreading throughout society. Over time, these policies escalated into systematic oppression and violence against millions of people. At the same time, Hitler focused on expanding Germany's power beyond its borders. He rebuilt the military despite international restrictions and began reclaiming territories lost after World War I.
In 1939, Germany invaded Poland. This invasion triggered the start of World War II, a conflict that would become the deadliest war in human history. During the early years of the war, Germany achieved rapid victories across Europe. Countries fell quickly as German forces advanced with overwhelming speed and coordination. For a time, it appeared that Hitler's empire might dominate the continent. However, the situation eventually began to change. Powerful alliances formed against Germany, including Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States. As the war continued, German forces became trapped in multiple large-scale battles that drained resources and manpower. By 1945, Allied forces were advancing toward Berlin from every direction. The once powerful regime that had dominated Europe was collapsing. In April 1945, Adolf Hitler retreated into an underground bunker beneath the city of Berlin. Surrounded by the final stages of defeat, he realized the war was lost. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler ended his life inside the bunker. Soon after, Germany surrendered, and World War II came to an end. The conflict left much of Europe in ruins and resulted in the deaths of millions of people. The story of Adolf Hitler remains one of the most powerful warnings in modern history. It shows how political instability, economic crisis, and extremist ideology can combine to create consequences that affect the entire world.